So our next conversation is going to be led by Jamie Aitken, who is the Vice President of HR Transformation at Betterworks. She brings over 25 years of experience delivering organizational development. And joining Jamie on the virtual stage will be Shipra Malhotra, the Director of HR Information Systems at Vertiv, Diane Cramer, the Senior Director and Global Talent Development and HR Information Systems at Extreme Networks, and also Jennifer Vries, the Director of Change and Performance Enablement at ATB Financial. So I tell you what, crew, let's bring in our panelists. Let's get this conversation going. And I see the chat on fire. Let's go on and keep the conversation going. So Jamie, I'll hand the stage over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vries. So welcome, everybody. I don't know about you, but as somebody who's been in HR for a long time, I always loved listening to HR people and talking about what was going on in their worlds as well. And that's what this session is all about. So I'd just like to introduce the panel here, and I'll ask each of you to just talk a little bit about your background and your area of focus. And as the theme for today is breakthrough conversations, I'd ask if you could also add a breakthrough conversation that you've experienced in your career. And let's start with Diane.
All right, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to work with Betterworks and also to be included in this panel. I'm Diane Cramer. I work at Extreme Networks, where I lead talent development, and only recently has HRIS folded up underneath me, but I have a very strong HRIS person that allows me just to focus on the talent development side. My breakthrough conversation is an opportunity for me to, I guess, pat myself on the back. Years ago, I was assigned, voluntold, to manage a shared service group. And the only person that I had on my team that could teach the rest of the HR generalists how the HRIS system worked, how to do data entry and reporting, was the data entry clerk. So she had, quote unquote, a lower level role, and I needed her to step up. And so we talked about it, her strategy. She got very excited. She created wonderful training materials and took it to heart. So I take that as credit. And now she is her own HRIS analyst at a great company.
That's awesome. Thanks, Diane. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Jennifer Vries, Performance and Change Enablement here at ATB Financial, up in the not so cold Canada right now. Thankfully, we do have some spring weather. My background kind of spans between that learning and development, org development, the communications, stakeholder relations, and now into the performance and change side of things. I think one of my breakthrough conversations was as that sort of getting into that leadership roles, and I had to take on a team that was just through a reorganization was just plunked with me. So all these team members were suddenly finding themselves in a role that they hadn't asked for. Maybe they'd already felt they'd grown out of and left this team previously. But it was really on that change management and how to dig in on some of that. So meeting with them one-on-one to hear their concerns, but then I got the really good advice to ask that question to also ask them what could be exciting about being on the team, so that when we met as a full team, that excitement, it started to grow, and it was just amazing. So that really got me into the change management side of things.
That's awesome. Shipra, over to you.
Sure. So, hi everybody, Shipra Malhotra. I work with Vertiv Corporation. I have responsibilities for HR information systems and oversight for global talent systems, talent and performance systems. And my entire career has been essentially doing digital, improving digital experience and doing HR implementations, and pretty much touched any product that's there in the market. Talking about the breakthrough conversation, a lot happens when you are evaluating an HR application technology, and there is anytime you're trying to put in an enhancement or a new tool in place, there's this dialogue that goes around for the cost benefit analysis or return on investment. And more recently, I was talking to another key stakeholder, and our dialogue, the way we were assessing this, it kind of transpired into how can we assess a tool against the value creation that it can drive for the business, the outcomes that it can influence. And since then, we have really changed the way we assess and evaluate things, and when it comes to technologies, tools, enhancements, or initiatives we take over.
I love that. I love that, and it's only fair. I should say the same. So, listening to Cassandra's talk earlier in the conference, she used the word change enthusiast, and I think if I look back on my career, I've been in HR for over 25 years, but I've always sort of been pulled towards transformation. So whether it was an HR transformation or a business transformation, if it was happening, I was there. If I could possibly be right in the middle of it. So I am a change enthusiast. But I had a breakthrough conversation, and in fact, it was with myself, if that makes any sense. I had started this role. I was mapping out a global talent strategy for a large firm. And so, of course, the first 60 days, I went around and interviewed all of the business leaders and asked, what was broken in HR and how could we do better? And I got, as you would imagine, a list as long as my arm that just identified pretty much everything was broken in HR as it related to our business. And I sat there, and this is when I had the breakthrough conversation with myself. I thought, oh my gosh, I asked the wrong question. So I went back and I asked all those same folks, what is the challenge that you're facing in your particular business that I in HR can help sort, support, and service? How can I help you remove obstacles and help progress the strategies that you're trying to achieve? Of course, as you can imagine, remarkably different answers, which really allowed me to have a much more business-focused strategy and helped me prioritize to what really needed to be focused on. So that was my conversation with myself. So this is gonna be very conversational here amongst us, two Canadians, two US. I love that, representing north and south of the border. So let's get into it. So the first question is, how do you get your team excited and up to speed with new technology in HR? And what are some of your favorite tactics for making technology adoption smooth and seamless? And Jennifer, I'll ask you to field that question first.
Sure. I love this question because it does cross over with that change management side that you and I have been chatting about. We're lucky here. We also have a CEO who is super passionate about the technology. It's part of our broader strategy. Team members can see it coming from miles away that we're going to be doing technology changes. But the big one that we've really found is that Change Champion Network, having those fellow team members, those leaders that close to them that they trust, helping to explain the change, helping to champion why this technology will help make their lives better. And that ties into that alignment with always telling them what's in it for them and that why.
Yep, absolutely. Diane?
I have a feeling amongst Jennifer's company and Shipra's company, Extreme is probably representing the mid-size, smaller employee base. We only have about 2,800 people worldwide, and our HR department is very small. For getting people excited about technology on the HR side, everybody is looking for an opportunity to upgrade what we already have. So there's a lot of enthusiasm about that. But if we were to go across the company, it is interesting. We have learned that if we don't have that change champion, as Jennifer was talking about, or that executive sponsor who is vocal. So we've made system implementations at the request of one executive, but we haven't gone so far as to say, and now you need us to help get it adopted throughout the company. So,
Right.
it doesn't quite go as smooth for us. But right now, I think our people and the HR team, we're looking for opportunities to simplify and to make more modern and to just get ease of use.
I love that. And smooth and seamless is an interesting phrase as it relates to adoption, because the path doesn't stop with go live, right? I mean, there's sustaining that adoption over time. That's something that we need to keep in mind. Shipra, lean in here.
Sure. So, I think mine is uh, maybe because of the size of the organization. We are 32,000 people in over 70 countries. Ours tends to be a bit of a more structured process. You cannot undermine the value of a change champion, absolutely. So what we've observed is being close to our customers, so being closer to in dialogue with HR and the executive team really helps us. If the new tech that's coming in, if it addresses a long-standing wish list item, then there's very little we need to do to get their buy-in. But if that's not the case, we have a more formal change governance process, system and change governance process. The new technology or the new feature for that matter, it's internally evaluated for the effort involved by the technical team. Then now we identify our key stakeholders and we kind of invite them in for an initial demo. And that demo is more like a collective dialogue. We are thinking through things, what business value it gives. It's further assessed for impact to existing process, number of people impacted, training or retraining needed, communication plan that we may need to follow.
Yep.
And based on that, we kind of prioritize it on the roadmap. But overall, if you talk about one tactic that always helps, keeping it simple. We've seen if we do very simple user interface, the screen is extremely simple with pertinent information, then the change management initiative that's required is very little.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And so hard to remember when you're deep in those design sessions to keep it simple. One of the things that I wasn't expecting on some of my earlier projects was the idea of navigating cross-functional collaboration across different functional areas in the organization. I'm thinking IT or finance, for example. How have you successfully sort of reached across the aisle to get that collaboration and partnership with different parts of your organization outside of HR?
If I could, Jamie, I'd love to go first because I'd like to talk about our IT business partner.
Sure.
We've had previous IT business partners assigned to HR, but it didn't feel that they really understood HR. They were just trying to help us project manage something. And we have a new person that is really having, digging in. What are you guys trying to achieve? What is it that you want? Are you looking for simple? What is it? So we've made a great partnership with IT, and that's probably just been in the last year. So we're very proud of that. And sometimes we kind of sort of conspire together. How are we going to get this approved?
Yeah, I remember very well. I had a business partner like that when I was at Bombardier, and we literally did not go into any meeting without each other. Like we were lockstep and very focused on the end goal, which was to get the initiative in place. And he understood very clearly what we were trying to do. So we were definitely joined at the hip, a team, no question.
Yeah, we do
Jennifer,
watch each other's back.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the notion of your IT partner being a co-conspirator. I love that. Jennifer, what about you?
Yeah, Diana, as you alluded to, we are a little bit larger. We're about 5,000 plus team members and mostly located in Western Canada, but a few others. But in HR, we're so lucky we have our own HR technology team. So they are almost like that peace bridge between us and the rest of the IT department. They help liaise and negotiate back and forth. So could not get done what we do without them. And other than that, is ATB is really big on that cross collaboration. It's even part of our ATB values is #1ATB.
I love that. Shipra.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, Jamie. It was started to get more and more involved on the operations side and data side of the HR systems and technology, the cross collaboration with finance and IT. That is interesting. It can be very interesting. And one of the things that we've seen, and I've seen kind of really work is how these different things come together. It's the connected dots that are not immediately visible, which kind of makes it very ambiguous to kind of going in and finding your partner there who you would want to collaborate and want to kind of be in lockstep with. And any of those scenarios I've seen as best handled if we could have an executive alignment, and then we could have like a steering committee kind of overseeing the common interest and the outcomes that you want to see and get out of these cross collaboration areas.
I'm so glad you brought that up too, because it's, whether it is a steering committee or governance, I think that's also a critical part of sustaining any change. It doesn't stop. I think we were talking earlier, the change doesn't stop in a technology implementation when you go live, right? We all know that there is to sustain that transformation over time, you still need to have that collaboration. So I love the idea of the idea of having some kind of a structure or cadence that you don't just go live, have a high five, and that's the end of the partnership. The partnership continues as you evolve over time. Speaking of that, though, there's also innovation that will show up on the landscape that maybe you hadn't seen before. And so the challenge, I think, with innovation, because at the very heart of it, it's about taking risks. So I'm curious to know how you manage the balance between creating creative risk-taking and maintaining sort of operational stability and compliance in your HR practices and programs. And maybe Shipra, I'll ask that to you first.
Sure. I mean, agreed. And, there are areas where you can indulge in risk taking, and then there are areas you cannot afford to when it comes to things like access, security, data privacy laws, handling PII. You cannot engage in any kind of risk taking. But and a little bit is also impacted by the organization's environment, if they are risk averse or they are risk friendly. If what we lay out is and it's under a bigger umbrella with cross interdependencies, and we do roll out a new tech or a new enhancement, there are areas that you can catch up in continuous improvement, and that's you kind of mature it over time, and that could be those that you could afford to take risks on, and we would do that. We would do that absolutely. But overall, some of those areas which are very, very critical, where compliance or all the other confidentiality of data, etc., are impacted, those would probably be completely off the table.
I don't know if you did it intentionally, but when you said the word critical, your camera just like came in and gave a close-up of you. So it was impressive cameramanship there, Shipra. Jennifer, what do you think about this balance, and how are you handling at ATB?
Oh, 100% agree with what Shipra is saying. It's about those guardrails, knowing where you shouldn't be taking risks, because as a financial institution, obviously security, confidentiality, huge. But then also giving that right playground or those guardrails to play and take those risks in the right spot. And that transparency on knowing where it is. So AI, we have some team members who are so keen to get in there, but it's those constant communications to them going, okay, this is where we're at with AI and how we can use it or where we can use it in ATB. And this is how we're looking to move forward to continue to bring it in.
Yeah, absolutely. Diane, balance.
This is an interesting question for us. We are a technology company, and by that, our product development team are risk takers, but they have their own sandbox and they're researching and always trying to put out the next greatest product or software. And I don't think HR has had the opportunity or has really thought about what should we be doing to be innovative on our talent development side, our performance management side. I think we were kind of stuck in doing it the same way. And when we came up with an idea or a new product or some new competencies, we tried to get it so right that we were late to the table. So some of you may have watched the Fireside Chat. I work for Kimberly Bassnight, and she's brought in a new flavor for us. She's actually not an HR person. She comes from an IT background. So she's challenged us. How do we be faster, nimbler, but also adhere to our little inside HR mantra of simple, repeatable, drive self-service? So we've kind of more adapted 80%. If it's 80% right, let's go for it and we'll fix it in the field is how I put it. So we're trying to be more risk taking as opposed to being absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and if I think about, regardless, Shipra, you're absolutely right. There are some areas that absolutely we need to be very risk averse in as it relates to HR. But if I think about all the HR folks that I've talked to over the years, even when we get into this notion of, okay, this is a safe place to innovate, there still seems to be, with a lot of practitioners, a bit of a hesitation to push the walls out a bit and to sort of hold on to the old way of doing things. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I'd be curious to hear that in some cases, HR sort of holds back and says, "Oh no, gosh, we can't. This can't be done," or the business isn't going to want to be able to do this, and I'll get pushback on that. Am I sitting alone here on this one, or is this something that you're doing too?
I think for us, our business asks a lot of our HR team, and I think it's because of the great partnership our senior HR business partner leaders have with their executive members. So, they're so creative, like, well, HR, can't you do that? And we're going, I don't think we can.
Right.
So we are pushed to take those risks. We're pushed to do those innovations. And for now, the challenge is on the HR side, how to free up. So if I use the example of ChatGPT, we do use the Microsoft Copilot, which is behind the firewall, so it's all good. One of my colleagues asked me for a list of, hey, do you have any questions our managers can ask their employees about how their health is doing? I said, okay. So I put it into a Copilot. She goes, how'd you come up with this so fast? I got it out of GPT. She went, is it right? I'm going, pretty right. So
80% right.
So it's those kinds of things. We have a great HRIS and analyst and data analyst, and she's a technology geek. She's trying to educate all of us in HR of what the future holds so we can kind of sort of stay ahead of our business.
And it makes me think of our keynote that was just talking about innovation. I'm going to misquote him, but it's this idea of little steps, that innovation doesn't mean big leaps and bounds in some cases. It can be little steps And I think back to, and this is a few years ago, I worked for a manufacturing organization where at the end of every year, HRBPs would go around and collect manual copies of everybody's completed performance management review form. And so they were the bad cops. This was in a manufacturing plants. So, you could see the HR people coming, and, it was never good. And the HR folks were incredibly distraught because it was it was completely demoralizing for them. And so I said, well, why do we have to do this? Like, let's stop immediately. And half of the team cheered and half of them went, oh, like shock and horror. No, we have to do this. And it's like, no, we don't. There's no business value in this. So yeah, taking little steps can lead to a mindset shift as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There are certain things that should be nobody's job. Collecting paper reviews, going from one desk to another should be nobody's job.
Nobody's job at all. I'm glad we're moving away from that. We're not all there yet, but I'm glad we're moving away from that. Sorry, Shipra, were you going to say something else? No, okay.
That's it. Yeah.
So let me switch focus here. So, roadblocks are always going to show up here and there. Can you share a tough challenge that you faced with either a new HR tool, a process, or even a transformation project, and how you tackled that tough challenge? Who wants to go first? Jennifer.
Okay. Well, I think this goes back to that innovation, that small steps too. When and our first question you're asking about the smooth process, there's no smooth process really. You can have it as smooth as possible, but those roadblocks, it's kind of just trying to anticipate it, but it's also those baby steps, moving forward with that 80%, as Diane says. So I know for us rolling out even just Betterworks, every department had their own way of doing performance enablement, some in spreadsheets, some in forms, some were probably paper, which again, Shipra, never should we be doing that, but it's okay. Knowing what is that minimum or that first step towards it to try and minimize that roadblock. So for us, it was getting everybody into Betterworks. So we got that quantity in there, knowing that next step is now the quality. So we'll be doubling down on that. So for us, it's the baby steps to move forward and just climb that hill.
I love it. So key takeaway, baby steps. Diane, what about you?
Well, I know I'm in a crowd of thousands here, but one of the challenges we were implementing a new ATS system. And, I told you our HR team is small, like I have one HRIS person. So, in our effort to move quickly, I think we forget those little itty bitty steps and what are the technical pieces that we really need. And I think one of the lessons that we've learned going forward is we need to go slow so we can move fast, because when we move fast, we do a lot of rework. Or we realize, we could have asked for this as part of the tool. So it was a hard lesson to learn, and we're learning a little bit more with our IT people to make sure that doesn't happen again, or at least we're more effective and efficient in making those decisions and implementation changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Slow down to speed up. I mean, anytime a completely new way of doing things are being implemented, there's a significant change resistance. Actually, this one is close to him. So as we implemented our calibration process on the Betterworks, and what we wanted to do is actually replace the PowerPoint deck. Take the executives away from PowerPoint decks, have them do it on the system, and let the tool be the dialogue. And and the good parts there is that can the calibration, as you bring it up during the talent review conversations, can the tool really provide all of the things that are needed for an effective talent development discussion? And it gets us pretty close there. So that was, and then from there on, you take on baby steps. We could not fully replace PowerPoint. That's just, it's going to take some more time, but old habits die hard. But then, that's where you just keep on it.
I remember those binders filled with PowerPoint slides, and then what would happen is 2 days before the succession meeting, some executive would say, oh, no, that has to change. And you'd have to do all of them all over again up until midnight. Yes. I'm going to share one that was a tough challenge for me. And it was pretty far along in this project for this global manufacturer. I and my team sat for a good while in a very nice little HR bubble, and we designed the most beautiful competency framework. We picked 22. Now, keep in mind, 90,000 employees worldwide. Okay, so we sat in this little bubble world of our own creation and built out a competency framework that had, I think it was 22 or 23 competencies, 7 layers or levels. And I took it up to the CEO, and he just looked at me and said, are you crazy? There is absolutely no way I'm going to have folks do this. It's too heavy. It's too. So I kind of, the big aha for me there, the takeaway was, be relevant to the business and don't get so far away from the business language that you are, that you're coming in without there being a connection to what they're trying to achieve. And in this case, it was just seen as HR spinning this lovely little tool for HR's sake. So needless to say that the key takeaway for me was keep it simple, which is what we did. So when you do have a new HR initiative or technology, how are you measuring the success? And what types of metrics or indicators are you using? Shipra, you had mentioned earlier, what are some of the influences that the outcome can have? But maybe I'll turn to you first to talk a little bit more about how you measure success in whether it's an initiative, a program, or a technology.
So there are one of the ways we have created our model for measuring successes. We kind of separate out the technology adoption from the KPIs that it's supposed to serve. So the KPIs become more business centric, targeting the value creation, targeting the whether strategically could it fulfill the need of the business. And then on adoption, we measure the completion metrics. So those are the two components, two broad categories we kind of, divide them under. So for example, our performance evaluation process, appraisal process, did everybody complete it? Did everybody go through the acknowledgement? So that's becomes your adoption. But could that dialogue actually drive the discussion around our talent bench strength? Could it actually drive the dialogue around having a succession pipeline for business critical talent and those at risk? Are there retention strategies? So those then become our KPI to measure whether it was successfully delivering with high degree of accuracy.
Yeah, I think it's important that we use examples here, and so thank you for that. One of the KPIs or metrics that I was using was cross-pollination of talent. So, are we actually achieving a movement of talent across different business divisions? And we were able to tangibly say that because we understood that if we could do that, we'd unleash more juice to the organization than if everybody just stayed in their different divisions. So I think it's helpful for the audience to hear the examples that when we're talking about metrics. So thank you for that. Jennifer, how about over to you?
Sure, yeah. Building on what Shipra had there as well, obviously it's that project. What was the intended result of it? And so how are we going to measure it? For us, we really focus on that team member experience. Is it saving them time? Is it making it easier for them to do their role and show up for our client? We're very much client obsessed and providing that differentiated experience. But in order to do that, we have to make sure our team members have that same differentiated experience. So does it raise the engagement and how there are, same thing with that talent pipeline, that succession pipeline? Is it going to make it easier to keep our team members here and grow within ATB? So it's really focusing on that experience. And then, of course, there's always the tie-in with that impact to bottom line as well. So that return on investment, if we're investing in something, what are we getting out of it?
And how are you measuring the employee experience? Is it by pulse? Is it engagement scores on a biannual or annual, or is it more, other things as well?
Yeah, we've been doing quarterly pulse with slightly different questions each time. So we have our chi in there, but we also do questions on change. How are team members feeling with the state of change? We have questions on how the performance process went, and that tie in with calibration and STIP and things like that. So we do a lot of those chi human metrics side of things.
That's great.
I don't know. I don't know if I should be envious or jealous. I kind of feel like, hey, I think we're the rebel teenagers as compared to these larger established companies. So metrics, we got Betterworks so that we could get better either at individual or departmental metrics. And one of the things that I've been trying to figure out is, how do we get more effective in that measurement? And are we doing the right thing to do the change? So, for example, some of our measurements are basically lag measurements. Like, how many goals do you have in Betterworks? Okay. That's nice. You have a goal in there. But what are we doing on the HR side or the talent development side to affect that lag measurement? So what are we doing on our lead measurements, doing more training, getting more buy-in, getting webinars going, creating interest around that? So we're still exploring on that piece, but we're excited to have some of the new things coming out in Betterworks that will help us do that.
Thank you for that. I'm just seeing a slide up here. Okay, good. They took it down. Thank you. I'm glad I gave that feedback and somebody was hearing about it. Speaking of getting and giving feedback, how's that for a segue? How are you ensuring that everybody's voice is heard and that they have fingerprints and input into the designs that you're creating, whether that's an HR strategy and tools? We understand employee experience is important, but do you have any engagement strategies for being able to hear that voice at the creation or design of some of the things you're thinking about in HR? How are you getting your users in the room, so to speak? So, the classic not good example of that is the one I just shared, where we just earnest HR folks sitting in a room by themselves, building a process and then flinging it out to the organization. How are you doing the opposite of that?
So, when we do have our initial, evaluation of new technology, we do kind of bring in our stakeholders so they have input into the design discussion. And just to keep the whole process agile, we do all this show and tell, which is your design and your requirement discussions are really a dialogue, and as you kind of evolve the tool. And it's that kind of helps ease out the whole thing of reiterative. Many times you hear them come back and say, well, I didn't know this is how it's going to look like, or this is what it would mean when I was saying what I was saying. So the show and tell process within and kind of clubbing your design and requirements together is something that we've seen help support the entire HR process really well.
And do you mind if I ask, can you describe that just a little bit more? Like double click on that a bit. When you say show and tell me what does that look like?
So what we would do is kind of pick up a new calibration process for that matter. And there's this high level understanding of a process. We would mock it up on the system and we'll say, okay, so this is how it can look like. And this is what the process will look like when you run it on this tool. And this is how the view of your team will look like. And then sometimes the feedback is more aesthetic in nature. Sometimes it's more structural in nature, telling us that, well, it's not fit for purpose versus, well, it's giving me everything that I need. It's just not visually, pulling me in. So,
right.
So, and that, and then also kind of it makes it very practical in terms of when you do have to run this process, when a manager or an executive leader kind of gets in, how will they experience this? What kind of support structure they need to be having in order to be able to support a leader that way? So it then becomes a dialogue and it kind of, evolves from there.
I love it. Diane, with your little lean team, how are you tackling this?
Yeah, lean team. I was a team of one until a year ago.
So, that's pretty lean.
Well, we do have a business change council, and generally they look at major system or IT implementations across the company, but they will also consult with us if I were to bring in, hey, we want to change this. What would be your suggestions on how to do that? And I can't say that we are consistent on bringing in the actual stakeholders and end users, but we're trying to get more effective in that. And our HR business partners are helping us pick the right people that will give us that honest feedback of what our systems are doing. We are also trying to switch our mentality in HR around. Don't just put in a system because it matches our performance management process, but what does the end user like? I think several of you, I think both of you talked about the user experience, and that's the mindset that we're trying to build, is what is the best in class user experience and how do we get as close to that as possible? But it's not been easy.
Jennifer.
I think that I agreed with both Diane and Shipra. There's that bringing in that user experience. As I said, our Change Champion Network, we try and target the right, those team members and leaders to share what their experience is. Obviously, we're engaging with our HR consultants who embed, but I think also it's about after that launch or after that new process is in, it's keeping the feedback cycle going. So I know when we brought in Betterworks, we did leader sessions just not only to help them understand the new system, but to get their feedback, their questions, find out where those pinch points were or those roadblocks that you brought up earlier. And then again, it was in our CHI, our pulse survey. So it's that continuation of that feedback to keep that innovation, that crucial new process going, and that adoption.
I love it. You can tell that on the east coast of Canada, the sun is setting. And so I feel like I'm Phantom of the Opera here with half my face, but nothing can be done. So, but I'm talking about the horizon. So let's talk about what's on the horizon for HR tech that's getting you excited. So what are you looking at? What's getting your heart to pitter patter? And how are you and your teams thinking about these new trends or technologies? Diane, let's start with you.
We were in our HR team, we rely on a lot on our HRIS data analyst person. She's a techie. It's great that she can do the technical part, but also break it down so the rest of us non-technical people can figure it out. So she's the one that tends to bring us, hey, have we thought about this? Or here's the new process, or here's the new technology. And then in each of the functions in benefits or in talent acquisition, they're always looking out for what are the new tools and systems that are in their space as well.
And so what are you seeing that you're particularly excited about?
For me?
Yes.
I'm excited that we have an HRS strategy that we didn't have in the past. Excited about we're starting to look at what are our tools, where can we consolidate, can we make it simple, how do we make them talk to each other or get that AI information out of it from disparate teams and disparate systems and stuff. So I think there's a great interest, not only with our RT partners, but within HR to figure that out. Is it a new HRIS system? I don't know, but that's the exciting part for us because we're asking the question, which I don't think in the past we had asked the question.
I love it. Shipra, what are you excited about from an HR tech perspective?
Oh, I'm really interested in AI. I'm looking forward to how it will actually help and enables so many more of the options and abilities, features that that can become a lot more simplistic in their rollout. And excited about ChatGPT, certainly.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it over here. I can tell you, Jennifer, what's on your horizon?
Oh, it's that AI side as well as Shipra. I know we're rolling out some career pathing planning tools here in the next quarter that will incorporate some AI. So it's about skilling. Skilling for the future and how our team members capture those skills, how they might get matched with potential new jobs, how leaders know what other skills are out there, but just making it, again, it's that quicker, finding that time, but also creating that alignment and making connections that would take longer without the AI or the software there. So also looking forward to the Betterworks and that goal alignment and planning that they have coming down the pipeline too.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I apologize for not saying that. So thank you, Jennifer. We're really excited and anxious for the next round of Betterworks products and upgrades. We're really looking forward to some of the talent stuff that we don't have right now. So our vendors and our partners are the ones that are helping us lead in technology. Like, what are you going to do so that we can use it?
Yeah, our CEO, Doug, is very excited about AI, and his excitement is very contagious. We're all pretty pumped about what are the possibilities. I have a slightly different question for you, because I think also, and it kind of touches, it touches the idea that, traditional HR, paper-based performance reviews, let's hope that those aren't still around, but even, the PowerPoints and the succession binders and all of that stuff. I have a little theory I want to sort of play out with you and see what you think. I think that also traditionally, now Diane, as a team of one, you would just be, I guess, switching hats all day. But traditionally, you have three. You have three
now.
But I think traditionally HR was sort of in those little bubbles of a process. So there was the talent acquisition folks, and then there was the learning folks, and maybe even training as a different department, let alone OD or succession. And I really believe that AI and the data that it's going to allow us to, number one, remove a lot of the administrative pieces. But I also think it's going to melt those silos down. And we're going to be starting to talk more and more from an employee life cycle or experience perspective, rather than I only do recruiting and that's all as an HR person I need to be focused on. What are your thoughts about that? You can tell me I'm wrong if you'd like.
No, I think I feel like my HR colleagues are future thinking, and they are saying, well, where are the recs going to open? What's happening with the headcount planning? What are the skills? And are our benefits good enough? Or we're working in a flex first remote hybrid environment. What kind of mental things and support things? So I think we're getting much better. It seems to be happening that nobody is just only doing this. And we're hoping that AI will give us more data as well to say if we have a high performer and, what is their sentiment on our EMPS score. So we're looking at those things because I think you're right. It's all coming together.
Shipra, Jennifer, what do you think the impact of AI is going to be on HR as it's structured and how it operates currently?
Well, I'm hoping that as we look to understand employee value proposition, AI can actually be that tool, that enabler to improve that and to influence the organization and the culture to drive value there. So that's I'm hoping, and that's where all of the functions, even traditional view, and as we automate and move forward, bringing it all together, that's all the silos actually work together to come together and offer that employee value proposition, and hopefully it'll create it will bring that to forefront.
I love that, Shipra, that enablement, that influencing, that connecting. Same here for that. And I see it just being able to hopefully elevate HR. It takes us out of that day-to-day, the more monotonous stuff, and gives us that power to provide that better advice, the more human-centered advice, and just make those better connections using it.
That I love all of what you're saying, because I think it's true. I think it will elevate HR. I think it's going to allow us to not just focus on a specific process, but in fact, think about the employee experience and also be thinking about it from how we can contribute to the success of the organization as well as the individual. So I think that's a lovely place to land the plane. And here he is, Riaz.
I agree. We need like an official podcast with all these great insights being captured here today that we could share more and more. Listen, Jamie, Jennifer, Diane, and Shipra, thank you for this conversation. I'm taking notes of the tangible examples you shared. How do we keep the feedback loop going? I love the point coming up about how do we slow down to speed up. So many great ideas. So we're going to let you four go. Thank you, each and every one of you, for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.